Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Counting down the days now until we can get started.
Yes, we are going to talk about the World Cup today because the World Cup is quickly approaching. It still doesn't feel right, Karl, that we're having a World Cup that will kick off games on the 20th, which is 11 days from now. We're in the middle of a Premier League season.
That's because it's not right. So we shouldn't be doing this. It's an absolutely weird sort of scenario for us to be in, and unfortunately today's podcast topic is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, so today we are going to talk about injuries to players who are now going to miss the World Cup or looking likely to miss the World Cup, and they are quite widespread. So you've got a working list there, Karl. Let's go with that and see where we land.
Right, we'll run very quickly through the ones who are already definitely out that we don't need to discuss because we already knew about, but worth highlighting how many there are anyway. For France, Paul Pogba and N'Golo Kante, that is the backbone of the team that won it 4 years ago, obviously. Portugal are going to be missing both Diogo Jota and Pedro Neto. Neither of them are going to make it. Gino Wijnaldum is out for the Netherlands. Argentina missing Paulo Dybala. Quite a big one there. Just goes to show what happened when you take a penalty, apparently. France also missing number 2 goalkeeper Mike Maignan. Poland are missing Jakub Moder, who's a big miss for them. Brazil have named their squad, and Guilherme Arana is the only one really who is the injury absentee, but I think he would have made it as a left-back option instead of one of the two Alexes. Mexico are missing Jesus Corona. Germany are now without Timo Werner. USA are missing Miles Robinson. And now, over the last few days, the 3 new ones, which you can feel free to discuss if you want. Ben Chilwell, obviously, for England. Canada's second-choice goalkeeper, Maxime Crepeau. And Huddersfield and Japan defender, Yuta Nakayama.
Yeah, Chilwell is a very unfortunate one for England because while they do have a lot of right-back options, they don't have many left-back options. And certainly no good left-back options now with Chilwell out, because Luke Shaw has been fairly poor this season and wasn't first choice for much of the season at Manchester United. James Justin could be an option, but he's also an injury doubt. The next in line is probably Kieran Trippier, who's going to be in the squad as a right-back, but may have to be first-choice right-back, considering the injuries to Reece James and Kyle Walker, who may not make it, given their current status. I think Reece James may actually have been ruled out officially today. So unless Kyle Walker is fit, Kieran Trippier is the starting right-back, because we know he won't trust Trent to start because, waistcoat reasons. Rico Henry should be an option. He's been pretty good for Brentford this season, but he hasn't been given a look. So I think Chilwell is a big loss for England, because I know he did fairly well at the Euros, but I just wouldn't trust Luke Shaw in a major tournament personally. And especially if you're looking at what the rest of England's defence would be, I think Chilwell's a big loss.
I would have had him as the starter, to be honest. I think in terms of the alternatives, Tyrick Mitchell is probably the other one who we didn't mention there, who's at least been in the England squad before. We did our England picks actually recently on the Independent. I went for Rico Henry as the backup left back with that, so I'm glad you mentioned him. I think he's been pretty decent, and especially if we're looking at playing wing backs for England throughout the tournament, which looks like it's going to be the case now. I think he's a decent option, at least for that side, as a slightly more fleet-footed than Luke Shaw, let's say, and a pretty decent delivery. Maybe not quite as high level defensively, but certainly tenacious, certainly got the work rate, and obviously as a new player, if he gets his chance, you know you're going to get that enthusiasm and everything, which makes up for a lack of sometimes positional sense anyway. And it's not like England have exactly the most impeccable central defenders inside of him anyway, is it? Let's be perfectly honest. So I do think Chilwell is a huge miss. As for the other ones, I'm not really sure who is the bigger miss out of the defenders that we mentioned there, Robinson and Nakayama, but obviously getting injured 2 days after your squad is announced is even more, of a heartbreaking sort of thing than if you get injured maybe just a week before, because you think you've done it, you think you're in, and then bang, all of a sudden he's gone. A quick word for Crepeau. He was only going to be the second choice keeper for Canada, but just for the farcical circumstances of it, MLS Cup final, tackles someone pretty bad, red card, sent off, carted off, broken shin. All in all, not the best day's work.
No, not at all. And quite a crazy MLS Cup final at the weekend. Yes. If people didn't watch it, LAFC beating Philadelphia Union on penalties in a situation where Philadelphia looked like they'd won the game, I think in the 124th minute, and then Gareth Bale scores in the 128th minute to send it to penalties, and then Philadelphia missed their first 3 penalties. Absolutely bizarre. But yeah, huge blow for Crepeau. Now he's at 28. He should be still at a decent level in 4 years when his nation will be one of the hosts. So he should hopefully get another opportunity to play in a World Cup. Nakayama is a really tough one. He's a decent player. Like you said, he'd been named in the squad, and then he gets hurt. And the thing is, it's not just like he's gotten hurt, but he'll be okay in 2 months. It's a ruptured Achilles. He might never be the same player. And if he is, it's a really long road back. So I do feel for him. I don't know much about Miles Robinson. Was he likely to be a starter for the US?
Well, he would have been, but this was like going back a year now. He's not played very much at all this year, so he's one of the 60 odd players that we would have referenced in the previous call ups on the USA squad that we did. But yeah, it's been fairly clear, and he had a couple of off-pitch incidents during the course of the year while his recovery was going on as well, so not been the best of times. Moving on then to this very week and last night. In fact, you mentioned James Justin. He's the first one, so he's not obviously he wouldn't have been a go-to, I don't think, but supposedly he's been named in the 55 by Southgate. And I think
the idea that there's 55 players good enough to play for England is funny.
Well, I mean, some of the 26 are going to be pretty funny as well, I have a feeling. So don't rule out anybody just at this stage, I think. I think with both sides missing a defender, Justin might have been in with a shout because of his ability, obviously, to play both sides of defence. And maybe Leicester's improvement, let's say, could have come at a good time for him to sort of get the nod as well. And I think he's been capped already, hasn't he, as well? So maybe he would have been in, but looks like he's out now. One who is not yet confirmed, but is out, let's be honest, it's Sadio Mane. That is a bad one.
Yeah, so Sadio got injured last night playing for Bayern in a 6-1 win. It's a knee injury. The initial report, I think, was from L'Equipe, and it said he was likely to miss several weeks. Now, I just briefly touched on this in the Daily Red today, Karl, when I was recording that, having just heard the news. And I do wonder if they might just bring him anyway, just because he's so important to the squad. And if he's not necessarily ruled out for a month or 6 weeks, maybe they bring him in the hope that he does get back in time to play in a game. But it still appears unlikely that he'll be fit at any point during the World Cup.
Yeah, Bild have unfortunately just released in the last hour or so saying it's actually going to be an Achilles issue, or the tendon at the top of the Achilles, which is the problem, with at least a partial tear. So if that is the case, it will be more than a couple of weeks, unfortunately.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, that's going to be a while. So that is Sadio out, and you mentioned obviously Ginny being out, and that the Ginny one is for me the more heartbreaking of the two, because he's had such a rough time since leaving Liverpool. Obviously, he was going to Barcelona. That's the club he had chosen to join. Their financial shenanigans, and obviously, that was the reason they lost Messi. Saw his deal fall through as well. So he just took the best offer available in terms of finances, and that was Paris Saint-Germain. It should be pointed out, he did not leave Liverpool for Paris Saint-Germain. He did not leave Liverpool for money. That's just how it worked out, because Barcelona fell through. He'd obviously gone on loan to Roma this year, and you were hoping fresh start, Serie A will suit him, and then he breaks his leg, I think, in the first training session or the second training session. So he's out. So that's a really tough one for me, is Ginny, because when he got hurt, there was still hope he could get back in time, but he's not going to. But both him and Sadio missing out is very, very tough. This, in all likelihood, would have been their last World Cup. Although, I mean, with Sadio, if he decides he still wants to play in 4 years, I can't imagine Senegal won't bring him. He wouldn't be in the squad, because he's the greatest player the country's ever produced. But for Ginny, it probably means he won't make a World Cup. The Sadio one is tough because it's so close. And it was a game that they won 6-1. It was a game they were going to win with or without him. And he's just very, very unfortunate.
He is, yes, and obviously factor in everything in terms of Senegal hoping they would go through that group. There's definitely a really, really good chance for them to at least make the knockout stages, and quite close to being their all-time most capped player as well, I think, to go with the most goals that he already has. So bad timing indeed for Sadio. The ones that we've got now who have been out for a longer time, and is now obviously last chance saloon to prove your fitness sort of thing. Spain, Mikel Oyarzabal, he's been out with an ACL since March. He has been back in training, but tonight, when we're recording this midweek, is the last round of La Liga fixtures, and he's not in the Real Sociedad squad.
Yeah, and he's as you know, he's a player I like very, very much, and I just don't think you can come straight off an ACL into a World Cup. I think the intensity of playing games every 3 or 4 days, if he'd played 1 or 2 games for Real Sociedad, you could make a good case for it. I just don't think there's going to be a real case for him, unfortunately, for this one. He's still young enough that he'll get to play in another one, maybe another 2, but yeah, this is not going to be for him, unfortunately.
There's the other thing of this World Cup, though, isn't it? Because usually we would have, let's say, each nation might play 2, maybe even 3 friendlies, and give people who have just missed the end of the season normally the chance to come back and show we've been in training, this is how I look in terms of match sharpness, but we're not even going to have that this time.
No, and there's no real training time either, because the players, I assume, fly out Monday, Tuesday, and then the World Cup kicks off next weekend. There's not even real training time for Oyarzabal to show Luis Enrique that, look, I'm good. I'm good. I'm sharp. I've been doing well in training at club level. I'm ready to play. But it is just such a pain in the hole that the World Cup is taking place. And now, from a Liverpool point of view, I'm very glad that it's taking place because I needed the season to stop. I needed the pain to stop. But yeah, for players like him, and there's another one who's on your list. I'm just looking at the article you've linked on the Independent, written by some charlatan. There's another player who's obviously coming back from an ACL tear, who's very, very important to his national team, but likely not to be risked because he's so young and has such a big future, and also just because he hasn't been playing.
Byron Wirtz. Yeah, massive talent. I think with Germany in that area of the pitch as well, you're probably looking at erring on the side of caution even more. You don't want a re-injury, obviously. It's very, very quickly back into Euros qualifiers and Nations League and all that other crap that will come after the World Cup is finished. So you want him ready for those, and I suppose if they're looking at playing him in sort of the 10 role, you've got Jamal Musiala has been playing really, really well again. Leroy Sané, before his own recent injury, was possibly one of the best second forwards in Europe in terms of form over that sort of 2 months or so. So if they get him back in anything like that kind of form, that's really, really big for Germany and will lessen the blow of being without Wirtz, obviously.
Yeah, just, Florian Wirtz is such a wonderful player to watch. He's one that I'd very, very, very much like us to sign. I don't care if he's not an ideal fit to our system. Alter the system to make it fit because he's just that good. And
you get one. Yeah, I'm giving you a choice. What would you like to happen? Wirtz playing off Salah, or Scamacca and Darwin together?
Oof. Oh, I love the idea of Scamacca and Darwin.
You only get one.
I love the idea. I'd take Wirtz off Salah. I would. What I'd actually do is I'd buy Wirtz and I'd play him as a narrow right-sided midfielder in that half space.
No, these are not the options.
They are the options. I am the manager. Listen. We've just been taken over by shady overlords. Jurgen's walked. No one else wants it. They've given me the call. I've walked in and said, right, 3 things are happening. Jordan, James, pack your stuff. Find your way through the James Milner door. All the money is being spent and we're going 4-4-2 and that's just how it's going to be. Here's the question for you as a little bit of an aside. Liverpool get Steve Ballmer as owner of the LA Clippers, about 120 billion net worth, not tarnished by human rights abuse. He is willing to spend whatever it takes. He's going to buy an Mbappe a year. Liverpool are going to win the league every season and win the Champions League every second season for the next 6 or 7 years. But it's Diego Simeone in charge, and he's going to play a 4-5-1 with about 2 billion worth of attacking talent on the bench, with 34% possession, 4 shots on target. 4 shots in total during the game and winning every game 1-0. Are you taking that?
I suppose I'll take it for the success. Why not? And a few.
Of course you will. Because winning is all that matters. Winning is all that matters. Do you know what? As much as I'm upset for Wirtz, the German player I'm really upset for is Marco Reus. So it looks like he's going to miss it as well. So you've got him in your list.
Yeah, I was going to go through the Dortmund boys, in fact, next. So we might as well start with Marco Reus. Yeah, mid-September he was out from, and they thought it was fine, but hasn't gone well. And same team at right back, Thomas Meunier as well of Belgium. Very important to them from a filling the role perspective in a tactical sense.
He's got a fractured cheekbone, so I wonder if we might get one of the Phantom of the Opera masks, and he might just be okay to play. I'm genuinely devastated for Marco Reus because he's my favourite German player of the last 10, 12 years or so. He's obviously been a player cursed by injury. He missed the World Cup win because of injury. It's just been such an unfortunate run for him. Like, he would have been starting in that 2014 World Cup. He gets injured in a warm-up game against Armenia. and misses the tournament. It's just... Then he misses Euro 2016 because of injury. He played in 2018, but Germany weren't the same. And then he just didn't play in the last Euros because he was, I think, knackered after the season. But, what is he now, 33?
This was
be 34 by the end of the season. This was it, wasn't this was his last international tournament. And if he doesn't make it, that's heartbreaking, because he is one of the great players of the last decade who's had his career completely spoiled by injuries. When he's been fit and able to play, he has been sensational as a winger, as a 10, as a 9, as a 9.5. He has just been incredibly good for Dortmund. And even before that with Gladbach, his second and third seasons there, he was ridiculous, especially that last season. Absolutely ridiculous. But injuries have just spoiled his career.
Yeah, been really, really tough run for him. And even like quite a few big domestic games or club level games, let's say, and not just at international level as well. He's missed out on quite a lot of potential success and key moments and all the rest of it. One final one in Germany before we depart the Bundesliga for a bit then. We started off talking about Sadio Mane, one of his teammates. Going to be a big one, and it's going to be quite a close call. Alphonso Davies.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of the Canadian national team, there's two players that stand out. It's him and Jonathan David, and he is the better of the two players. He is maybe the greatest player Canada have ever produced, and it still winds me up that we allowed him to go to Bayern when we had basically a free run at him for a year before that. I will never get over that. I will never, ever not be annoyed at the fact that we allowed a player who is, if not already, he is going to be the best left back in the world, to just, huddle off to Bayern while we sat in our hands. Hopefully,
I think he'll be in the squad. I think he
will be in the squad.
Yeah, he's not going to play.
But I want to see him play.
Yeah, he's not going to play the last game for Bayern. They basically said he won't be involved, but he should be fine for the group games, or at least some of them. But it's a hamstring, and he is a very, very fast player, and he tends to need those hamstrings to make one of those attributes of his work. So that's quite a big one. And you mentioned Jonathan David. He's obviously fine, and he should be a very, very important part for them. The other really important player for Canada is Atiba Hutchinson, veteran midfielder, been involved for about 350 years now. Must have
veteran. He stopped being a veteran like 15 years ago.
He's in Besiktas and not playing. He hasn't played this season at all. He had a couple of fluid on the bone issues basically earlier on in pre-season. Took quite a long while to get over it, but again, I think he's going to be pulled up.
He's in the squad no matter what.
Yeah, but is he going to play? Because again, properly, what is he? He must be 38, 39, something like that.
I think he's 39. Now, I wouldn't put it past him to still be knocking around in 4 years' time.
Maybe.
But it seems a little bit unlikely that at 43. Now, he could probably go and play in the Canadian Premier League for a couple of years. But, yeah, he's going to be in the squad, but they need him on the pitch. And this would be sort of the crowning moment of his long career. And he's just had really bad luck with what seemed like, I remember when he got hurt in the summer, and it felt like a fairly innocuous thing. Mm. They said it was a bruise, and then it became this, he's got, fluid on the bone, and the bruise isn't healing. And I know he's training again, but he hasn't kicked a ball since the end of last season. So even if he does make the squad, and even if they put him on the pitch, he's going to be rusty. Like, there's just no way around it. He's not going to be the same Atiba Hutchinson that we've seen.
I think the good thing about being 39 is you're probably not relying on pace and mobility as your biggest attributes anyway. So maybe they'll not see the worst of him at the very least and can still rely on him to play.
Yeah, with a bit of luck. I really hope he does make it, and I hope he gets on the pitch to play in at least one of the games, because I do like Atiba Hutchinson. Right, where are we going next on your world tour?
We are going to Spain and Barcelona, and we've got a couple of side tangents to go along here because it's you and you love them, so we're doing it for you. First up, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy goes in the squad anyway, even if he's not really able to play, just because there's 26, maybe you can get away with one gamble, and he's good enough to gamble on relative to the rest of the squad. Ronald Araujo.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, this kid is good enough to risk. Now, obviously the question is, what sort of risk are you taking if he re-injures himself? Like, it's a thigh injury. Are you risking a very serious injury if he gets hurt again? That perhaps means that down the line he's not able to become the player that I think most people think he's going to be, which is, I think most people have him penciled in that in 5 years, when we talk about the best centre-backs in the world, he is going to be very firmly in that conversation of the elite level, along with the likes of Ibu Konate. The thing is, like you mentioned, the 26-man squad really does give some flexibility here. And you could afford to bring, in the case of an Atiba Hutchinson, even if he can't play, you bring him in a James Milner type of role. You can afford to do what Sven did with Theo Walcott back in the day. Even if you have no intention of playing him, you bring him for that experience. So you probably do have 2 or 3 spots in your squad that you can give to players that you either want to give the experience to or glean the experience from. So I think Araujo will go. He may go in the understanding that there's not a chance that you're playing, but come along for the experience and, the adventure and being part of the squad. It's the last hurrah of that great generation of Uruguayan players. Muslera, Godin, Caceres, Cavani and Suarez, they're all riding off into the sunset after this one. And probably 1 or 2 others as well. So for Araujo, who you're going to be looking at to be the Godin replacement, you're looking at him and Jimenez as the next duo at centre-back for Uruguay. Come along, I'm going to stick you in a room with Godin, and you learn every single thing you can from him about what it is to be a professional, what it is to be a leader, what it is to be a great defender. I think he goes even if he can't play.
I hope he does. I think he has a big impact on that squad anyway, and quite a large group of them have spoken about looking up to him now and the way he's made a real role for himself in Barcelona and is admired there and everything else. So it would be good for them if so. Tangent number 1, Gerard Piqué. Have at it.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because he's obviously just retired from club level. But is he worth bringing from an experience point of view?
For Spain? Oh, I think no, I wouldn't be talking about that at all. Sorry, I should have been clearer.
Oh, you meant just...
I was asking you, what do we make of Piqué being sent off without playing on his final match of football?
Oh,
sorry, I was not suggesting Spain sabotage themselves again at a World Cup. No, God.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Jesus. I don't really know. I don't really know what to make of the whole situation. By all accounts, what he said to the referee was fairly dreadful. Maybe he just wanted to go out on, something new that hadn't happened to him. You're talking about a fella who's done pretty much everything in the game: a Premier League and a Champions League with Manchester United, 8 league titles with Barcelona, 7 Copa del Reys, 6 Spanish Super Cups, 3 Champions Leagues, 3 European Super Cups, 3 World Club Cups. He won a World Cup and a European Championship with Spain. Won an under-19 European Championship with Spain. He's done it all. He had never been sent off for telling a referee, and I quote, "I shit on your prostitute mother," which is creative, unusual for certain, but
it's pretty usual in Spain. I assure you of that. It doesn't flow quite as well in the English tongue, but
that's a fair point. Yeah, he likely didn't say it to them in a Navan accent, so that's a fair point. His life has been a little bit unusual for the last couple of years. Let's put it that way. He's obviously separated from Shakira this year after 11 years and a couple of kids together. So he's had that kind of flux. His business interests have obviously taken off in the last couple of years as well. He's had, the tax fraud thing that all Spain-based players seem to go through. He's become a semi-pro poker player. So, his focus doesn't seem to have been on football fully for the last couple of years. And obviously he's, declined quite rapidly and become more of a liability than anything for Spain. Look, it would have been nice to see him going out and having one last game and performing well, but Barcelona are in a title race. And obviously Xavi felt that he wasn't going to play him.
I mean, Marcos Alonso has been starting centre-back, so it kind of tells its own story, really, doesn't it? So
yeah, and Marcos Alonso is a dreadful left-back, let alone... I will say this on Barca. I think they've obviously done a lot of mental things, and they've spent silly amounts of money considering the financial situation they're in. But I do really like how they've rebuilt that defence quite quickly and efficiently. I think Balde looks a real talent. Now, he can play both sides. I think he's better as a left-back. I love Jules Koundé. I love Arejo. They've got Christensen, who I like, Garcia, who I don't like. But I think if they can add one either really good right-back and move Koundé to centre-back when he's fully fit next to Arejo, or another really good centre-back next to Arejo and leave Koundé at right-back, I think Koundé, new centre-back, Arejo and Balde is something they could have in place for a decade and be sensational, especially when you consider they'll have Pedri and Gavi as 2/3 of a midfield there. I think credit must be given. They've rebuilt quite quickly, and Xavi has really impressed me. Now, there's still, moments where he looks a little bit lost, but he's getting the best out of Ousmane Dembele. Torres looks good again. Rafinha is a quality player, hasn't had the best time. We know Ansu Fati is a really special talent, and they've got young Pablo Torre. If they continue to pick up Pablo Torres and Pedri's and just continue to build through their academy and not do stupid things, we might be witnessing the early days of the next great Barcelona team.
Well, along those lines, one who they did bring in, which looked sensible when they bought him, I think, and obviously longer term, it still could be, but has had a poor season, quite a few months actually, quite poor. Did start last night. Again, I didn't think he played well, and went off. And he's a regular for Spain in the squad, certainly in and out of the lineup, but I want to know whether you would take him and if you would start him. is Ferran Torres. Obviously, a knock-on effect of those roles being up for grabs is Oyarzabal that we spoke about earlier. He's not going to be involved. But you got Ansu Fati there. Marco Asensio has had a bit of a resurgence with Real Madrid recently and has been in the squad for Spain as well. So there's quite a few options there, and Spain have quite a fluid and flexible attack anyway under Luis Enrique. So what role for Ferran for you?
I would bring him. Now, there's the biggest issue for me with having Ferran Torres in my squad is that he seems like a bit of a prick. And he seems very, very egotistical, which is a red flag for me for a player as young as him who isn't, one of the elite young players. And even then, it's a bit of a red flag. But for me, I really like him as a false nine type. I thought when he played as a false nine for City last year, before he got injured and then obviously went to Barca, I thought he was outrageously good, and I thought he made everything click around him. Interplay with Mahrez on the right and Foden on the left, being able to swap through positions and obviously play both wings. I do think he's a very talented player. He obviously hasn't had a good season, but he's looked a bit better in recent weeks. Things haven't gone great from Barcelona, it must be said. I mean, 12 goals in 44 games, not the return they hoped for when they paid a significant amount of money and gave him a fairly big contract. But I would bring him. I would just be very careful about how much influence I let him have on anything, such as I wouldn't let him have the remote for television or choose the music, much less have him be one to decide who plays anywhere. Talented player, but certainly needs to be maybe knocked down a peg or two in terms of the ego.
All right, well, since you're taking him, let's go with someone else who is now going that we could have spoken about, but literally in the last few minutes has said he's fit and fine. Well, fit, I think, is not necessarily entirely accurate, but he's going to be able to play anyway. Son Heung-min suffered a facial fracture, obviously, and had to have surgery about, a week ago now or so in the Champions League, but he says he will be okay. Big positive for Korea.
Massive positive for Korea, and I'm so happy for him because we've been talking about football for years, and he, as you know, he's one of my favourite players. I love watching him play football. I think he's the best player at Spurs. I think he has been for a couple of years. I know people always lean towards Kane, but I think Son offers even more, and I think it's not a surprise that in a season where he hasn't been great, Spurs haven't been great either. I know they're fourth in the league, but they're underperforming. I think he's brilliant, and I love when there's a player at I don't want to disrespect South Korea by saying a lesser country or whatever, but you know what I mean. They're not one of the footballing powerhouses, and they produce the odd world class player. And I think in South Korea's case, they have one for certain in Son, and one who looks like he's ascending to that level in Kim, the centre-back from Napoli. I just think it's so important for him, as arguably South Korea's greatest ever player, to get the opportunity to represent them and lead them into a World Cup. I'm thrilled for him. I'm absolutely thrilled for him. And like you said, it's a huge thing for South Korea, because when you've got him, you've got a chance. You're going to have a chance in most games when you've got a player of his quality. And, if they can keep things tight at the back, which it looks like they should be able to, especially if Kim is in his best form, then Son can be a match winner for them. And, you look at their group, and Uruguay, there's some questions there. Ghana, there's some questions there. Portugal, there's some questions there. I think it's a very tough group, but I do think South Korea have a chance of coming out of that group.
It's as big for them that he is there as it is big for Senegal the other way with Mane.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, Sadio is the exact opposite of this, where, again, one of the greatest, and not the greatest ever players from, I suppose, a second-tier footballing nation. A very strong team, but not, they're not Brazil or France or whoever. They're an emerging footballing country, and they lose Sadio, who is the one. Like, they've got a similar situation. They've got that great centre back in Koulibaly, who gives them an opportunity to keep things tight at the back, and then they've got Sadio at the other end as the match winner. So huge blow for them, but huge boost for South Korea. And I'm really hoping it's Uruguay and South Korea that come out of that group. I'm really hoping that's the two that come out. I think they're the two most interesting teams. Portugal have some injuries, and I've been saying this for 2 years. I think the other fella holds them back. I think when they rid themselves of the ego, I think you'll see more from Bruno, more from Bernardo, more from Rafael Leao, more from Neto when he's back, more from Jota when he's back, Ramos, Neves. I just think all of these players will have so much more to offer when the whole team isn't just focused on keeping one player happy. And a nice group stage exit might be the way for him to end his international career. Though with his ego, he'll probably stick around until the Euros.
Well, we will see. Just a couple more then. I want just to hear how much you would risk on their fitness, let's say. All comparable in terms of injuries which could be overcome, and they look like it will be sort of hit and miss time-wise. Calvin Phillips for England, Takahiro Tomiyasu for Japan, and Raphael Varane for France.
I in all three cases, I would risk bringing them. I don't know that Varane is necessarily still one of France's two best centre-backs, but I do know that he's the most experienced and he's very important in that team. And having lost Pogba and Kante, I think they have to bring him. And if he's fit enough to play, I think he should play. I think him and Lucas Hernandez as a pair work. Obviously, Lucas Hernandez is coming back from injury as well. So, there's a risk there too. Tomiyasu is hugely important to Japan. He's probably their best defender, maybe their best player overall. I suppose the question I have with him is, we saw him miss so much of last season with injury. How big is the risk? If he gets hurt, could that be 3-4 months on the sideline? I think he's excellent. I think he's a much better defender than Ben White. And if I was Arsenal manager, he'd be starting right back and Ben White would be sat on the bench. And Ben White's having a good season, don't get me wrong. I just think Tomiyasu is a better player than him. And in terms of Calvin Phillips, I think you have to bring him because I don't think you've got any midfield options. You've got Declan Rice, Jude Bellingham, and that's it. That's literally it. They're the only two I would trust. Henderson is so far past his best and hasn't strung good games together since before the pandemic happened. We've talked about Ward-Prowse on the Southampton pod this week. I just think outside of set pieces, he's a bit of a nothing player. And I'm not sure he'll be taking set pieces for England because they've got other options. I think you have to bring Calvin Phillips. What is it? Dislocated shoulder he's working his way back from?
And he says he feels he's ready for training.
I mean, the fact that he's only ready for training is a concern, obviously. But if you're just asking him to sit in the middle of the park and do that job of just keeping things ticking over, if they're playing, now they'll probably play some sort of back five in some games. But if it's a 4-3-3 and you sit him in the middle with Rice to his left with a bit of freedom and Bellingham to the right with a lot of freedom, I think that's a good balance in midfield. I think defensively he's good. He's obviously a good passer of the ball. I think he brings some leadership in that role as well, which I think Rice and Bellingham need. I think one of the biggest fallacies in the game right now is Declan Rice's leadership. West Ham look like a lost ship, and I see West Ham fans on a daily basis bemoaning the fact that Mark Noble retired and there's no leadership in the team. So how is Declan Rice a great leader if you're missing Mark Noble? I just don't see how that's possible. Whereas with Phillips, I do think he's a natural leader. I think at Leeds we saw that. He was the one that led that team. Liam Cooper might have worn an armband, but Calvin Phillips was the leader of that team. And again, for Leeds this season, I think we've seen a certain lack of leadership in the team. Even though they've improved in midfield overall with the duo they brought in, I would definitely bring him. I would. In an ideal world, you wouldn't because he hasn't been playing, but I think you have to bring him if you're England.
Well, hopefully that is all the ones we're going to get, but we have got one round of games still to get through in the Premier League, same in the Bundesliga and beyond, and as we say, Spain's last round of games is midweek, so they're playing that last night and tonight, so hopefully no more Sadio Mane incidents.
Let me ask you about one player who is also a risk, but I just want to point out I'm gutted for Jesus Corona that he's going to miss this World Cup because, again, probably his last one. Now, again, Mexico are one of the hosts for the next World Cup, and he'll be 34. No, he'll be 33. So maybe he'll still be playing at a decent level and still involved in the national team by then, but I am gutted for him. Kyle Walker, we've talked about the England fullback situation. No Chilwell, no Reece James now. That's confirmed that he's out. The manager doesn't trust Trent. Walker is sort of the safety blanket for England because he can play right back or right side of the three. He's the one English defender with real burning pace, and that can cover for a lot of the mistakes that that John Stones makes or that Harry Maguire is prone to making. Would you risk Kyle Walker coming back off what I believe is groin surgery in this tournament?
I mean, assuming obviously he's in a position where they think he'll be fit enough to play at least one, if not two of the group games, then yes, I would take him. One, because as I said before, England do not have an amazing group of centre-back options. It looks very, very much like it'll be the back three. And I think he is really important on the right-hand side of that. With the speed, with his recovery pace, with his ability to help a switch, later in the game if it turns out that they do need to go to a four or anything else as well. I actually think he's, even not fully fit, probably second best defender that'll line up for England, to be honest. And I don't think Kyle Walker's that good of a defender, but I think that the choices that have been made for England's defence over the last couple of years are questionable at best. But yes, I would take it, like I say, as long as he's going to play at least one, if not preferably two of those group games. I think I would gamble on him. Again, you've got the 26, which I think does make a difference. It gives you a little bit more leeway than it would have been the case otherwise, but also I just don't like the other options that are likely to go.
No, I agree. I think the England team is fairly close to being picked. Pickford in goal, Walker, Stones, and Maguire as a three. Trippier right wing back, Shaw left wing back, Kane and Sterling as a front two or two of a front three. I assume it'll be Rice and Bellingham to start in midfield, but I think Phillips, once he's fit, probably will get in there somehow. So who's the 11th player then, Karl? Is it Mason Mount?
Foden.
In kind of a
Foden.
Phil Foden.
Foden, Sterling and Kane, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is what well, it's not what makes sense, because what makes sense would be a very different team with, Bukayo Saka also in that same group. But yeah, I think the last spot comes down to Foden, Mount, or Saka. And then when Phillips comes back, it just depends on how scared Southgate gets. But we are only a couple of weeks away from the World Cup kicking off. Today is the 9th. The tournament begins on the 20th. England's first match is on the 21st. They'll be playing Iran and no doubt drawing 0-0. Then they face the United States, and then they face Wales in the last game. Last thing to hit, because Harry Welshie will be upset if we don't mention it. I think it's fair to say that even if Gareth Bale was in a full body cast, he would be going to this competition and probably playing. So there's no real reason to doubt that he'll be there. Am I right?
Oh, no doubt at all. I mean, Bale scored, Bale was available, Bale played some minutes. There's no reason to think he won't be going at all. I think he'd probably be even more likely than Araujo and the other ones we've mentioned. If he's able to walk, he goes.
Yeah, even if he can't. Wheel him down the wing. You've got plenty of lads there who don't do a whole lot other than run. They can run with Gareth Bale being pushed. That'll be fine. Right, that is that. That is our World Cup injury catch-up. We have plenty coming during the World Cup, so don't be worried if you're thinking there might not be enough content. There'll be plenty. We'll find ways and means. There's going to be a regular pod for myself and Karl. There's going to be a couple of On the Books. We're looking to put together a bit of a special edition of On the Books as well. So that's in Trev's capable hands. Karl, have you got anything coming out in the next couple of days that you want people to keep an eye out for, or are you firmly in World Cup coverage mode at the moment?
Yeah, completely snowed under with it. I've got more things to do than there are days left before it, so just wait until it starts.
And he's trying to move house as well, so keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And if you have any gifts of the foam hands, foam fingers, foam boots type of, send them to Karl Matchett, care of Anfield Index. And we'll make sure they get to him anyway. Right. Thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.